Dark fantasy, action, adventure. Synopsis. After being betrayed and left for dead, a young warrior awakens in a forgotten tomb, resurrected by an ancient necromantic power. Now bound to the forces of death, he must navigate a world that fears and hunts necromancers while uncovering the secrets of his new abilities. Protagonist is ambushed by former comrades. Left to die in a dark ruin, he hears a voice calling to him. Awakens with glowing eyes, surrounded by skeletal remains. The first signs of his necromantic power emerge. He raises his first undead warrior to escape the ruins. He experiences intense pain as his body adapts to necromancy. Learns he must consume life force or souls to sustain himself. A mysterious spirit appears, offering guidance. Raises a small army of skeletal minions for the first time. Faces his first battle against bandits, shocking them with his dark magic. A bounty is placed on his head. Encounters a mercenary guild hunting necromancers. The world building expands. Necromancy is illegal, and an order of paladins exists to exterminate them. Protagonist is forced into hiding in a cursed village. The protagonist hears voices from the spirits of the cursed village. A powerful wraith appears, testing his control over the undead. He learns about a hidden necromantic artifact buried beneath the village. Encounters a fugitive sorceress who recognizes his power and warns him about the paladins of the Radiant Order. A paladin scouting party arrives, forcing him to make a quick decision: fight or flee. The protagonist and the sorceress are ambushed by the paladins. He uses his undead warriors to hold them off but realizes their divine magic burns his minions. A fierce duel against a paladin captain who wields holy fire. The sorceress uses her magic to create an escape route. The village collapses into a pit as the artifact awakens, summoning a skeletal behemoth. The skeletal behemoth rampages, threatening both the protagonist and the paladins. He attempts to control it, but it resists. The sorceress helps him understand that stronger undead require a binding ritual. The behemoth begins absorbing the fallen dead, growing more powerful. The protagonist makes a desperate choice, fusing part of his own soul with the behemoth to tame it. The protagonist successfully binds the skeletal behemoth but feels part of his soul being consumed. The paladin captain is horrified at the act and swears vengeance. The protagonist and the sorceress escape deeper into the wilderness, pursued by the Radiant Order. The sorceress reveals her past. She was once an apprentice to a necromancer but betrayed her master to survive. A mysterious figure watches them from the shadows, hinting at a greater force interested in the protagonist's powers. They travel to a lawless city where criminals and outcasts gather. The protagonist needs supplies, but necromancers are hunted even here. They encounter an information broker who offers knowledge in exchange for a dangerous job, stealing a cursed relic from a noble's vault. A new antagonist is introduced, a rogue necromancer who has become a crime lord in the city. The protagonist begins to question if all necromancers are truly evil or if the world simply forces them into darkness. The heist begins. The protagonist sneaks into the noble's manor, but the vault is heavily protected by magical wards. Inside the vault, he finds more than just a relic. He discovers an ancient, chained specter who pleads for freedom. The sorceress warns him that breaking the chains could unleash something dangerous. The noble's guards and a group of mercenary mages arrive, setting off a chaotic battle. In the end, the protagonist is forced to choose: take the relic and flee or free the specter and face unknown consequences. The protagonist decides to free the specter, which reveals itself as Eldrin, the Forgotten King, an ancient ruler cursed by the Radiant Order. Eldrin offers knowledge of necromancy in exchange for a portion of the protagonist's power. The escape from the vault turns into a city-wide chase as mercenaries and bounty hunters pursue them. The rogue necromancer crime lord, Vadris the Bloodhand, watches with interest, seeing a potential rival. The protagonist's bond with the sorceress deepens as she reveals her true name, Lisa Variel, once a noble mage before her exile. Lisa warns the protagonist that making pacts with powerful undead can erode his humanity. They take refuge in the underground tunnels of the city, meeting a guild of gravewalkers, mercenaries who use dark magic but reject true necromancy. Vadris sends an invitation, offering an alliance. Meanwhile, the paladin captain from before, Sir Aldrich Vale, arrives in the city, rallying forces to cleanse the necromancer scourge. The protagonist must decide whether to confront Vedris, join him, or eliminate him before he becomes a threat. The meeting with Vedris takes place in a ruined cathedral, repurposed into a lair filled with undead servants and dark banners. Vedris claims he can help the protagonist master necromancy without losing himself, but he demands loyalty in return. The protagonist refuses, sparking a duel of dark magic and wits. Meanwhile, Sir Aldrich's forces begin their assault on the city, targeting both necromancers and criminals alike. In the chaos, Vedris is wounded but vanishes, vowing vengeance. After escaping the city, the protagonist feels the strain of his growing necromantic power. Eldrin warns that every soul he binds takes a toll on his own, slowly changing him. The group travels to an abandoned necromancer sanctuary, where forbidden tomes reveal lost necromantic rituals. Lisa discovers a ritual that could stabilize his power but at a steep cost, sacrificing a part of his humanity. As he hesitates, shadows move in the ruins. Paladins have tracked them. Sir Aldrich leads a surprise attack, wielding a divine relic capable of purging necromantic energy. The battle is fierce, with the protagonist forced to unleash his skeletal behemoth once again. Lisa barely survives after being wounded by holy magic. In a moment of desperation, the protagonist performs a dangerous ritual, absorbing the souls of fallen paladins to fuel his power. The act causes his reflection to shift. His eyes now resemble those of an undead. After the battle, the protagonist grapples with the morality of his choices. Lisa, horrified by what she witnessed, questions whether she can continue traveling with him. Eldrin warns that he is on the path to becoming something more than human, and that the world will never accept him. Meanwhile, political tensions rise as the Radiant Order tightens its grip on the kingdom, declaring a holy war against all dark magic. A mysterious noble sends a messenger with an offer, one that could change the course of the war. The messenger reveals that Duke Valtrin, a powerful noble opposing the Radiant Order, seeks an alliance. The protagonist, wary of political games, reluctantly agrees to meet. Upon reaching the Duke's fortress, he learns that Valtrin secretly harbors exiled mages and seeks to use necromancy as a weapon against the Church. A tense political dinner takes place, where Valtrin's advisors argue over the ethics of using dark magic. The protagonist realizes that even among those who claim to support him, he is seen as a tool rather than an ally. While in Valtrin's fortress, the protagonist studies forbidden texts detailing an ancient necromantic ritual, the ritual of unbinding. The ritual would sever his remaining humanity, making him an immortal undead, free from physical limits but also possibly losing his emotions. Eldrin urges him to embrace it, while Lisa warns that it could turn him into something worse than the Church's nightmares. The protagonist grapples with the choice. Does he embrace power at the cost of his soul, or try to walk a different path? Meanwhile, spies from the Radiant Order infiltrate the fortress, preparing for an assassination attempt. Assassins strike in the dead of night, targeting both the protagonist and Duke Valtrin. The protagonist fights back, unleashing necromantic power in a way he never has before, summoning spectral wraiths to devour his enemies' souls. However, he feels something shift within him, his body growing colder, his heartbeat slowing. Lisa is forced to use healing magic on him, but it burns his flesh, confirming that he is changing. Valtrin survives the attack but warns that their war has escalated. The Radiant Order will march soon. In response to the assassination attempt, Duke Valtrin declares open rebellion against the Radiant Order. The protagonist is torn. Does he fully commit to this war, or is he just being used as a weapon? He meets Valtrin's generals, some of whom distrust him due to his necromantic power. Meanwhile, reports come in that the Radiant Order is mobilizing an army of holy warriors and inquisitors, preparing for a full-scale purge. The protagonist senses something darker, an unknown force manipulating events from the shadows. The protagonist begins to experience terrifying symptoms of his transformation. His heartbeat slows, his breath becomes unnecessary, and his reflection flickers between human and undead. Eldrin tells him this is the hollowing, the irreversible process of becoming a true death-bound being. Lisa begs him to find another way, but his power continues to grow. His undead now move faster, react quicker, and think with a terrifying intelligence. In a desperate attempt to slow the process, he performs a ritual to anchor his soul, but it requires a powerful sacrifice. Meanwhile, spies reveal that a High Inquisitor of the Radiant Order, a legendary warrior mage, will personally lead the charge against them. The Radiant Order's army, led by High Inquisitor Seraphiel, begins its march. They wield divine magic, burning away all traces of necromancy in their path. Valtrin's forces prepare for war, but morale is shaky, many fear facing an army blessed by the gods. The protagonist takes command of his undead legion, his forces now more disciplined and deadly than before. However, he struggles with his identity. His army sees him as their savior, but deep inside, he feels himself slipping further from humanity. The chapter ends with a chilling moment. Seraphiel arrives at the battlefield, her presence so powerful that even the undead hesitate. The war begins with skirmishes. Valtrin's forces use guerrilla tactics while the protagonist's undead harass supply lines. A secret plan is put in motion. Valtrin's spies infiltrate the Inquisitor's war camp to sabotage their divine relics. The protagonist takes part in a high-risk mission, sneaking into enemy lines to personally confront Seraphiel's second-in-command. However, during the infiltration, he is ambushed by holy assassins, warriors trained specifically to fight necromancers. The chapter ends with Seraphiel stepping onto the battlefield for the first time, radiating divine power so intense that even the protagonist's strongest undead begin crumbling. Realizing a direct assault would be suicide, the protagonist devises a different plan, using necromantic rituals to raise an army from within the Inquisitor's ranks. He sneaks into the enemy camp at night and performs a forbidden ritual, awakening the fallen knights, paladins who died in past wars, now bound to his will. The spell works, but something goes wrong. One of the undead paladins retains its consciousness and remembers its past life. Meanwhile, Valtrin's spies succeed in poisoning the enemy's supply of blessed water, weakening the Inquisitor's divine protections. The protagonist's army launches a counterattack at dawn, catching the Radiant Order off guard. The battle escalates into chaos, with undead paladins now fighting alongside the protagonist's forces. However, Seraphiel unleashes her full power, summoning divine constructs that burn through the undead legions. The protagonist is forced into a one-on-one duel with her, light versus darkness, divine magic versus necromancy. The duel is brutal, each of her attacks searing his very soul, but he counters by using shadow magic to drain her life force. Just as he gains the upper hand, something within him snaps, his transformation accelerates, his form momentarily shifting into something monstrous. In fear, Lisa intervenes, breaking the fight apart before he loses himself completely. After the duel, the protagonist struggles to regain control, his reflection now flickers between human and something far darker. Lisa pleads with him to stop using his power so recklessly, but Eldrin urges him to embrace his fate and become something greater than human. Meanwhile, Seraphiel retreats with her surviving forces, but she is shaken. She has never faced a necromancer like him before. Valtrin sees the protagonist's power and begins treating him less as an ally and more as a weapon. In a moment of self-reflection, the protagonist considers a dangerous path, seeking out an ancient being rumored to know the secret of stopping his transformation, or completing it. The protagonist and Lisa travel to the ruins of an ancient necropolis, where an entity known only as the Nameless One is said to reside. Along the way, they encounter rogue necromancers who revere the protagonist as a prophesied king of the dead. When they reach the necropolis, they find it guarded by spirits of the forgotten, cursed souls that whisper of forbidden knowledge. The Nameless One finally reveals itself, a being neither living nor dead, existing outside time. It presents the protagonist with a choice: abandon his mortal self and ascend into true undeath, or fight against the inevitable and risk his soul being devoured. The protagonist wrestles with his decision. If he completes his transformation, he may become unstoppable, but will he still be himself? Lisa, desperate, tries to find another way, searching through forbidden texts in the necropolis. Meanwhile, Valtrin begins consolidating power, preparing for a final confrontation with the Radiant Order. The protagonist finally asks the Nameless One what he truly is. The answer shakes him. He is not just a necromancer, he is the reincarnation of an ancient warlord who once sought to conquer death itself. As the truth settles in, assassins sent by Seraphiel attack, forcing the protagonist to make his choice now. As the assassins strike, the protagonist instinctively unleashes his power, This time, he doesn't just summon the dead, he absorbs them. His transformation surges forward, his body shifting, his mind becoming sharper but colder. Lisa watches in horror as he no longer hesitates to take lives. His power is undeniable, but is he still the man she knew? The assassins are annihilated, but one survives just long enough to whisper, "She is coming." Meanwhile, Seraphiel prepares a final holy crusade, gathering relics strong enough to erase the protagonist from existence. If he embraces his transformation, the protagonist meets with the Nameless One one last time, demanding the final ritual to shed his mortal limits. The ritual is brutal. He must sacrifice his final ties to humanity, including emotions, memories, and even his physical heart. Eldrin watches approvingly, while Lisa begs him to stop. As the ritual completes, his body becomes something new, neither living nor dead, a true master of the void. The world itself seems to recoil from his presence, and a new legend is born, the Shadowbound King. If he resists his transformation, the protagonist chooses to fight back against his fate, using forbidden magic to try and anchor his soul. However, resisting comes at a cost. His body begins breaking down, pain racking his every step. Lisa helps him perform a desperate counter ritual, but it weakens him drastically. He is now vulnerable, still powerful, but no longer invincible. The Nameless One vanishes, warning that he has made himself a target to even greater forces. With his transformation complete or resisted, the protagonist returns to Valtran's fortress, only to find it under siege. Seraphiel has launched the final attack, wielding a divine relic said to burn away all dark magic. The protagonist prepares for the ultimate confrontation, his army of the dead against the full might of the Radiant Order. But something is wrong. Another force is moving in the shadows, manipulating the war for its own ends. As the battle begins, he realizes, he may not be the biggest threat anymore. The battle begins in full force, with Seraphiel leading the charge, wielding a divine relic capable of erasing necromantic magic. The protagonist commands his undead legions, but the Radiant Order's forces are stronger than expected. Holy constructs, war priests, and even enchanted siege weapons turn the tide. Meanwhile, Valtran struggles to maintain order among his own generals, some of whom doubt that fighting alongside a necromancer is wise. As the protagonist fights his way to Seraphiel, he begins to sense something else, an unknown presence watching the battle, guiding unseen forces. As the protagonist nears Seraphiel, an unknown force intervenes, disrupting both dark and holy magic. A third army emerges, cloaked figures wielding a strange fusion of necromancy and celestial power. Their leader is revealed, Malakar, the first necromancer, thought to have been erased from history. Malakar's forces are neither living nor dead, they exist outside the cycle, immune to both divine and necrotic energy. He declares his intent, to end both the Radiant Order and all who practice necromancy, claiming the protagonist has unknowingly played into his. The battlefield erupts into three-way chaos. Seraphiel is forced to ally with the protagonist temporarily against Malakar's impossible army. The protagonist faces a crucial decision: fight Malakar alongside the Radiant Order, or retreat and let his enemies destroy each other. Lisa, still hoping he retains his humanity, begs him to help stop Malakar before he reshapes the world in his image. Eldrin, however, warns that Malakar might hold the final key to the protagonist's true origins. As the protagonist hesitates, Malakar turns his attention to him, smirking. "I see you now. You are closer to me than you realize." If the protagonist seeks the truth before choosing a side, realizing Malakar knows more than he's revealing, the protagonist withdraws from the battlefield, searching for answers. He and Lisa flee to an ancient necropolis where Malakar's name was erased from history. There, they uncover hidden texts detailing the origins of necromancy. It was never meant to be a dark art, but something stolen and corrupted. The texts hint that Malakar was once a hero, betrayed by the gods themselves. Meanwhile, the war continues in his absence, with Seraphiel barely holding the line against Malakar's forces. As he reads the final passage, the protagonist realizes the horrifying truth: he shares Malakar's bloodline. If the protagonist confronts Malakar directly, the protagonist battles his way through Malakar's forces, using both necromancy and shadow magic to counter his unnatural army. Malakar watches with amusement, effortlessly tearing through both undead and divine warriors. When the protagonist reaches him, Malakar does not attack, instead, he offers an alliance. He reveals that the gods cursed necromancers out of fear, and that the Radiant Order is built on lies. Malakar offers him a chance to break the cycle forever, by wiping out both the Radiant Order and the undead, forging something new. But there's a cost. The protagonist must fully embrace his transformation and let go of his mortal attachments. The protagonist now faces his ultimate decision. If he embraces Malakar's path, he will become something entirely new, beyond necromancer or human, and help reshape the world. If he fights Malakar, he must unite with Seraphil and Valtran's forces, leading the final battle against the first necromancer. Lisa tries to reach him, reminding him of who he once was. Eldrin, meanwhile, urges him to transcend mortality and forge a new destiny. The chapter ends with the protagonist taking his first step toward his final path. The protagonist stands beside Malakar, his mortal self fading. As he embraces a new existence beyond humanity. Seraphil, betrayed, launches a desperate attack, but her divine magic falters against his newfound power. The Radiant Order is shattered, their holy relics burning away as Malakar unravels the god's influence over the world. Lisa, heartbroken, refuses to flee. She confronts the protagonist one last time, begging him to remember who he was. The protagonist hesitates, but his transformation is already complete. He no longer feels regret. With the old world broken, the protagonist and Malakar reshape reality itself. Necromancy is no longer forbidden, it becomes the dominant force, replacing divine rule. The protagonist is crowned the Shadowbound King, ruler of a new era where death is no longer feared but embraced. But something lingers, a whisper in the void, a reminder that power always comes with a cost. In the final scene, the protagonist gazes at a mirror, seeing a faint memory of his former self, before the reflection vanishes into darkness.